Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Bad Boss with Anya Soto, where we talk about bad bosses, good bosses. We talk about leadership, what's happening in the world. I am here with Jardena London today, who is a dear friend, a colleague. We've done some work together. She's an author, speaker, business transformation consulting. What I love about her that she's really working to bring soulfulness to work because businesses thrive when they use a soulful lens. And we'll talk about the community she's building and the trainings. Welcome, friend.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you, Anya.
Oh,
You know,
I'm
I
so
love to spend any time with you possible.
I know. Thank you. Me
And it's
too.
nice to have everyone else join us when we're spending time together.
And that's how I created the show. I just feel like every time I connect with my friends and colleagues over the years, we always have such good conversations. And I'm always like, oh, dang, like I wish we recorded it. So this is just cool. It's going to be on our website. People can go and listen to here's what happens behind the scenes. I'm always, I feel, and Jardina was again in one of my leadership development trainings, which Svetlana and I had a podcast the other day, and it's been 6 years.
I was listening to it this morning
Oh, you were
and this
so
whole week. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I'm like, wow, 6 years. So Jardina was another member of our tribe and leadership. That's how we met and have done a lot of work in Canada together. She's in New Jersey, but she used to fly to Toronto when I was in Toronto. Now she flies to San Diego, which is great. We just switch places a little bit. So let's start with transformational leadership. Again,
Mm.
I'm gonna make a face, but I'm like, oh, it's like everywhere. Everyone talks about it. Can you define it a little bit for us?
Yeah, I will. And I will say I was doing transformational leadership and then all of a sudden it became everyone's job title. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I was doing that. It didn't have a word for it, but I've been doing that for a long time. And I'm sure a lot of people have.
Yes.
So transformational leadership, how do I define that? Um, it's anybody who wants to change their world. And it is more of a calling if you feel called to do it, not because you think it's a stepping stone in your career or you have this job title or you want to get certified, but
Mhm.
because you feel called to change your world, whether or not people work for you, but you just kind of feel like this is what you need to do, then you're a transformational leader. And
Mhm.
so you might think of it like a change agent, but it is like that you have this internal drive. And I love transformational leaders and I do a lot of my work for that audience because it's freaking hard.
Because I'm like, where do you get trained to be transformational leader, transformational consultant?
On my online training, stay tuned for details in the chat in the
Oh my
in the notes.
gosh,
But
yes.
there wasn't any because what is the competency, right? Like what is that? How is that? So I'm seeking to define that competency in a lot of my work, but also to support that really hard job
Yeah.
where you come in. I One of the transformational leaders that I worked with, who was a wonderful transformational leader, she said, "Come in every day, and I don't know if I'm going to get fired or promoted." And I said, that's the way to live. If you're a transformational leader, that's exactly the right balance that you're walking.
Wow. So, but I would assume, right, that they need to have some power and influence. I love the kind of the ideas like, hey, if you want to change your world, you should do it. And I do a lot of work with like HR consultants and C-suite. But it's like you have to have like so many of us are like, I don't like the way my organization functions, like there's a better way to do it. And you and I talked about it because I told you like I'm unemployable because I go in and I always see like how we can do things better and optimize things. That's just my personality. I'm always looking for gaps. And so what where
Well,
do those people find that power and influence?
so a lot of my work is split into three pieces: the me, the we, and the system, I call it. So if I just to give you the quick summary, so
Yeah.
the me, so that's like the three basic buckets of competencies
Okay.
for a transformational leader. The me is like that self-awareness, like self-management, where I kind of think of it like if you're polluting with your baggage,
Mhm.
then you're not going to be able to be an effective transformational leader. So like you sort of have to know yourself first so that you're
Yeah.
not, spewing pollution around you unknowingly or even knowingly.
Yep.
And then the we is what you're speaking to about. I don't like to think of it about influence because it's not so much like imposing your will, but it is about resonance, like being able to be resonant with the people that you are serving, right? So there's like a two-way street that we're on the same frequency. So
Yeah.
figuring out how to communicate, like if you think about resonance, like in physics and music, right? Like there is a harmony with your frequency.
Mhm,
And you
mhm.
need that frequency to not just be like a single
Tone, monotone.
exactly. Well, that maybe resonates. So the way someone explained it to me once, and I liked it, was like, say if I transmit purple, and maybe all the purple people who understand purple feel like I'm resonant with them, but the rest of the spectrum doesn't understand me at all.
Mhm,
So I need to
mhm.
work to expand the range that I can resonate with.
Yeah.
Like, that's what a transformational leader does. So you think of that as like, how can I influence? I can have followers and influence. It's kind of like that. But I think of
Mhm.
it more like, how resonant am I to the broader audience?
We talked about enrolling, right? A competence of
Mhm.
enrolling into your vision. You're like, hey guys, I have this vision. Who is in? And it's like, and here's what it looks like. And here are the texture, the color, the like idea,
Yeah.
the dream. And people are like, yeah, nah, I'm not into it.
Yeah.
And others are like, oh my God, I love it.
And everyone doesn't have to be into it, right? I mean, you don't have to get all the colors of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But the other thing about the enrolling is it's a two-way street, right? Resonance is a two-way street. So I may have a vision and an idea, but if I can never be changed, then I'm still a dictator, really. And I have,
Mhm.
maybe I get some followers who are like my cult followers, but I, if I can never change my mind, I'm not really enrolling people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's temporary. Okay.
I'm
And the
influencing.
systems?
And then the system ultimately is, how do I take those two competencies and mobilize people, but also create sustainable change in the system? Because if the system's working against you, and we talk about systems a lot, is like the policy, structure, culture, how things work, that lives long beyond me and anybody who's in the system now. So we can mobilize people to get a project done or to get some change done. But if I still have to be there to keep
Mm.
influencing it with my personality, then that's not systemic. So you need
And
to build it in.
yeah, and actually, I'm having a lot of those conversations right now, especially around either succession planning with C-suite, right? It's like I'm doing this offside for two companies that are merging, and leaders told me they're like, we are afraid when we leave, the culture is not going to sustain itself
Yeah.
because we played that role. So I am curious. What do you, if you've heard that, what are some systems that you think they should be looking at?
Well, so it's easy to identify bad systems or soul crushing systems that are in place and then
Yeah.
replacing them with something different. But I think the typical places to look, and when I think about like how we design organizations, I mean, reward systems are key. Right. I had a conversation with somebody just yesterday about how mind-blowing it is that people are so susceptible to change their behavior based on a reward system. Like, I'm kind of a rebel, so I don't care what your reward system is, but really people do respond to reward systems. So if your reward system is contrary to your value system, which we see all the time,
Yeah.
then that you're not creating that systemic change. So having your reward system aligned to the culture that's one way.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of the policies and processes, right? So, um, I think about, well, a big one is always the budgeting or funding process, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
Um,
Who is
and
involved? Yeah. How do we make those decisions? Who is involved? Yeah.
yeah, and like the other big one is governance, right? That's a big word that I hate using, but like how things get approved and funded or to be worked on and to move forward that's a big part of what the culture is.
Yeah. Ooh, I love it. I'm like, there's so many places we want to go to. Here's what I'm going to ask you because, again, I don't get to chat a lot with transformational leaders. And I know you were building a whole community. And, guys, I'll put a link to transformational leadership community where Jardena leads. I think it's weekly calls, right? On Wednesday
Weekly
morning.
calls.
I've
Yep.
attended a couple. They're amazing. They're phenomenal. If you are inside your organization wanting to create change and need guidance and advocates and just like peers who are also doing this work, who are every day, like you said, coming to work and they're like, I'm either going to get fired or promoted. There's a community for you. There are other people who are crazy like you and us, and like join them. Georgina will be leading
Yeah.
you. I agree. There's not a lot of like I remember we talked about it, I think like even 3 years ago, right? With like, because I know your background is in business agility, and it's like,
Mhm.
how do you create those leaders? Especially now, I feel like it's such a good opportunity to change systems because the world is changing anyway. Everyone is moving to hybrid, everyone is moving to globalization, everyone is moving to sustainability. Like the marketplace is opening, right? So I'm like, it's such a good opportunity to be like, hey, like systems are changing anyway. We can let it happen or we can be more intentional about it, but the world is changing. Like what?
It is a window of opportunity, and I think the pandemic opened that window
Mhm,
for us to
mhm.
radically change. We saw radical changes in the way we work faster than we ever thought possible
I
when the
know.
pandemic started. But now we
Mhm.
need to, like, make some corrections so some things weren't better.
Yeah,
We do
exactly.
have an
So what
opportunity.
did you see? Let's talk about that. What did you see that were like bad changes and what were like some good changes that
Well
pandemic brought?
well, the good change was the openness to remote working,
Yeah.
and I think right, so we and the tools for remote working accelerated tremendously during that time. Right,
Yep.
I mean, collaboration tools like Mural that were out there, but they were never quite good enough,
No
and
CTO could have done it.
they quickly got accepted, and then, of course, any video conferencing tools, we know
Yeah.
Zoom, and everything. But I think the other thing that became really evident was the importance that we place on our human connection with our coworkers. So
Mhm.
one thing I've said for years, and I still say, is work is the new village. I mean, how close are you with your local community? Maybe you're close with your local community, but it used to be like that was your only community. And now
Yeah.
you can have a global community with your coworkers, and we don't always treat that
Mhm.
um, as a human community,
Yeah.
right? And during the pandemic, we were so hungry for human connection that we leaned into that and appreciated it so much more, I think, than we ever
Yeah.
did.
And I'm looking at young people who don't have any other community. They were in school, kind of like high school is done, college is done, and more younger people are like craving because work became their only place of community,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So what were some
And
like,
then
I love the word you use, kind of like the toxic, or the word you use was
bad.
polluting. Like what were some things that kind of happened on its own that are actually like need to be corrected?
Well, I saw a wonderful presentation about this, and there was actually research done by Michael Arena. But my key takeaway from that, and you experienced it, but you maybe I couldn't quite articulate
Yeah.
it as well, was that when you already had strong ties, say a working team that you already worked with, then that you could accelerate productivity during the pandemic when you were working remotely. You already had the strong tie.
Yeah.
It was all the weak ties that suffered. So I sort of
Mhm.
had this feeling during the pandemic that I would really like to see some people I don't know and not even
Mhm.
talk to them and just pass them in the grocery store, but you didn't really do that.
Mhm.
Like, you just didn't have this interaction with people you didn't know. You couldn't meet new people really in your work. It was hard to you could sort of you had to do it very intentionally. It was very
Yeah,
sticky,
which is
but
like,
you didn't pass them in the cafeteria. Like, you just didn't have those weak ties really suffered. So
yeah,
that's something to I don't know if it's polluted, but that was something
yeah,
that was lost, and that had a productivity impact too.
totally. So we talked a little bit about what kind of behind the scenes. I ask you because you work with, like me, with so many different clients and different organizations. Yeah, like you're seeing a lot of things. So what are two kind of biggest challenges you're seeing right now, and maybe that is something that can guide these transformational leaders in 2024? What do you think is what's on your radar?
Yeah, so there's 2 big things. One big thing that I'm seeing a lot is, the need for because of interest rates and the economic,
Yeah.
realities that we're facing, there's a lot of emphasis now on cost cutting, cost effectiveness type work. That is what I'm seeing that cause is sort of some reverting back to old ways of management. So more directive, more say command and control, less somebody said it well on a call I was on recently, less willingness. It's much more costly to invest in something risky. And by risky, I mean just having an innovation session with your team, like that
With no
cost.
evidence that it's going to work.
Right, right. Because we need to know that we need to be able to tie that back to a dollar savings, and some
Mhm.
of those things to like look for
Mhm.
new sources of revenue, they're
Yeah.
not a sure thing.
And it's like trusting people with money, right? Because now it's like, again, that control and command where it's like, well, everyone is now needs to be so, and I see it in like training and spending. I'm having a
Mhm.
lot of proposals that are just like hanging in there, and people are not saying yes, but they're also not saying no because they're like, should we not? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? So it's
Mhm.
interesting. So, what would be the opposite of control and command when it is the reality? Budget is the reality. So, what is the transformation? How are you going to approach it in your world?
Yeah. Well, I don't so it's interesting. I'm working with a client now, and the same things or very similar things that we do to provide collaboration and innovation, you can also apply those same techniques to cost effectiveness. It's just that it's a different requirement, but same process. So you when we look for ways to save costs and still use the same techniques where we're learning and adapting and pivoting, you can save more cost when you're learning, adapting, and pivoting towards a cost savings than when you're being directive and command and control.
Mhm.
It's the same problem that we have even with innovation is there's just not certainty there. And if you're not comfortable with uncertainty, particularly in a cost cutting scenario, it's really hard to be to be in a learning environment where where you have faith that we will learn together and adapt.
And again, coming back to trust, I trust that you'll make the best decision from with what you have.
Mhm.
And I feel like, yeah.
It's there's a little bit of faith too. So there's trust,
Mhm.
but when you're
Mhm.
talking about the working in a world where we don't know, a world of a VUCA world with uncertainty, it's not that I don't trust you, it's that I need to trust that we will come up with an answer and a solution that's better than what we have,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's not like, do I trust you, Anya, with my bank account number? It's and I
Yeah.
do, but it's like, do I have faith?
We've never done this before.
Right, we've never done this before.
Yeah, wow, that's a big one. The cost effectiveness, yeah, that's a big one. Okay, anything else that's on
Well,
your radar?
I think the other big thing that we're seeing is, we talked about this before the show. What did I say?
I
Oh,
notes. You said,
I already forgot what it was. It was something, and you said, "Don't say anymore. We're going to talk about it live."
oh, complexities,
Oh,
complexities.
right, right, right. So it kind of goes in with this is VUCA, right? It's the C in
Yeah.
VUCA now. It's we keep saying our world is so complex. Our world is so complex. It's not that much more complex. The reality is we've made it complex. And I think that is like people, including me, are overwhelmed by the complexity. And sometimes I just think we've we've imposed it on ourselves. Like, why is it so complex? It doesn't need to be. We've made it complex. The world didn't make it complex. And that complexity, I think, is causing, I'm seeing like a lot of work that's sort of like half-ass done because it's
Mhm.
like too complex and we just want to like sort of check the box and like, who knows what's going to happen? Who cares?
Yeah.
Because everything's like
And
so
just keep moving forward. Yeah.
just get it done. But I'm not
Mhm.
really sure what we're getting done anymore.
Yeah. I see a lot of that with technology. So
Mhm.
many companies. I think I heard, like, I read a research that like big enterprises use on average around 150 different tools, softwares. 150 because every team is like, yeah, we don't work in Asana, we work with this. Oh no, we don't use this, we work with this. And it's like the enterprise. So I feel like that's one of way
Mhm.
of complexity. How do we simplify like our
Just
technology?
tools. It's not even that they're using the same many tools for the same thing, is that there's so many things to have a tool for now,
Yeah.
right? It's like, well, that's the tool for this, and that's the tool for that, and
Yeah.
that's the tool for this. But yeah, it's overwhelming, right?
So how do
So
we simplify? Again, like I want to like, and I know you don't have all the answers, but when in your mind, you're like, okay, again, for transformational leaders, it is true. We have a lot of complex systems. Where do we start?
I don't think that it's about the tools, honestly. And so what I hear from people most is we don't have time to think deeply about what the best solution is or what the best
Yeah.
strategy is, or I don't have time to think deeply about my work.
Yeah.
And that to me the solution there is the same as solution it's always been, which is like you need to prioritize and work on the few most important things, not a million different things.
Yeah.
And at the same time, right? Like over the course of a year, maybe it's a million different things, but like
Yeah.
at any given moment, we need to be deep on the thing that we're working on. Mastery. I think we've lost this appreciation for like mastery and deep thinking.
Yeah.
So that, and if you have a million tools to help me execute, that's one thing. But I think the fact that we can't like, and by the way, it's all everybody at the same time. It's not that I'm working on something and you're working on it and I can never collaborate with you. Like, let's get all together, think
Mhm.
deeply about the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
That's where I think we're creating unnecessary complexity because it's like, well, let's work on 100 things at the same time with all different groups and combinations of people working on different things, and we'll track it and we'll Slack it and we'll,
And somehow, yeah, somehow we will connect it at the end. Yeah.
yeah,
I love that how we bring it back to systems, because when I think of culture change, right, one of the ways we do it is by creating internal teams that we call culture champions.
hmm,
And it's almost like creating this team like that is cross-functional, that has different perspectives, that has different, like, I don't know, ideas and roles and view. So it almost like, what if we created the same for this transformation? Let's say, I don't know, we create a team, right?
sure.
And it's okay, our role in Q1, like, yes, we have some stuff, but it's like this team is going to get together to think about simplifying complexities across the org. Like, is that something you're seeing? Would that be like a,
Sure. That's what, I mean, that is what, so I'll give you a few cautionary words there too. So that is what transformation teams typically do, right?
okay,
And before we even call it transformation, you could call it operational effectiveness, Lean Six Sigma,
yeah,
like all these process
yeah,
improvement teams. I mean, that's what process improvement teams do. The
yeah,
word of caution that I will give you, and what we're doing differently, I think nowadays, or at least trying to, is have it be participatory. So you know that when those process improvement teams come around, no one wants to talk to them, right? Why? Because I've come up with a solution in my ivory tower, and now I'm coming down to tell you how stupid you are and that you should do it the way that we figured out. So
yeah,
that's what we want to avoid when we have those teams. So
yeah.
those teams need to be facilitating, not imposing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Facilitating, not imposing. It's so true. And then for everything, we're going to create a policy. We will never do that again. And we'll never do this again. And then we'll never do this again. And it's like all of a sudden we're living in this like little tight box and we're like, okay.
Right.
So I
And then
guess,
no one likes you, right? Then you're the most hated group in the company.
yeah, I know. So I think, yeah, this is, and I keep talking about coaching facilitations are the skills of 2024.
So much.
Like, this is this skill. Do you talk a lot about transformational leadership around facilitation as a skill and competency?
I'm 100% on board with it being the most important skill. And so here's another little tidbit for you. So what's the downside of not having that competency is that we have ineffective meetings. One of the things I see is people are afraid to bring too many people together because they don't know how to facilitate them. And I'm like, well, if you know how to facilitate them, then you can bring the right people into the room. But it's like, we want to have these subcommittees that are all it's reductionist, right?
Again,
You want to
complex.
reduce it down to these little fragments and you think you're going to bring it back together, but you can't. So rather than trying to figure out how to chess master that, why don't we figure out how to all come together? So
Yeah.
facilitation, especially in a VUCA world, I think is the skill of like, how can we enable that collaboration across like lots
Yeah.
of different people inside and outside the company, right? Because some of them are outside the company.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Okay, so we are almost at 24 minutes. I
So
know it's
fast.
like it went, I know it goes by so fast. But like, I love chatting with you. I love the way you see the world. I think the best thing that I love about you, I mean, there's so many things, but there's always a sense of ownership with you. And I love how you say we created complexity. Like, let's address it. We ourselves created complexity, which also means we can uncreate it, right? And like create something else. So you're not afraid to say the things that I feel like sometimes nobody's saying. And I know that's what makes you such a powerful facilitator. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll put the links to the community. You have an amazing book. I'll put a link to the book that you wrote and the speaking. Oh,
I'll hold it up for you right here. Here we go.
thank you. Cultivating transformations. And you think,
Mhm.
what's your dream for 2024?
Oh, my dream for 2024 is for me personally is to share, to get more edgy on how we actually organize ourselves as humans in companies. Because
Ooh.
I really do think that we're taking some things as like law of how we have to be organized, and we don't need to be organized that way. So I want to get super edgy on that next year.
I love this. I'm like, this is, as I said, this is the time. Like, let's get edgy. I
Mhm.
love that. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for all the work you do and being on my podcast again. I'll put all the links and happy holidays.
You too. So I'm happy to be here. Always happy to talk to you, Anya.
Thank you.